I was lurking around on the After Effects subreddit the other day, and I saw this. And I wonder how that was made. In this video, I'll show you the two ways I tried to replicate this animation. One with keyframes, and the other one with expressions. These are the results. Before you say anything, I know they look different, but anyways, let me show you what I did. I've timestamped the two processes, so you could jump to the part that you are interested in. Create a new composition, mine is 1080 by 1080, and it's for 10 seconds. Then create a text layer. I'm not gonna type in all the cities and countries myself, so I asked Bart, give me a list of cities followed by the country, one on each line, and without deleting index number. Please? I wonder how many of you say please to AI, like I do. I then paste the text a couple of times until it covers the whole composition. I draw the dot with the ellipse tool and change its position to 540 by 540. Then I move it to the left like you see in the example. I also bring up the ruler so that I can align my dot and text more accurately. When you open your text properties and select position, then you will see range selector below animator 1. Open up the advanced option, you'll see more settings here. Change based on from characters to line. It means the text will animate by line rather than characters. Under range selector, keep start as 0, but change end to 2%. You can't see what it does, but let me zoom out a bit. You see the first line of the text has been selected. Then you can toggle the offset button until you see the selector comes down to New York City and Beijing, China. Now when you push X in position, you will see Beijing, China being pushed to the right. It's time to get some keyframes in. I put a keyframe at 1 second and another one at 2 seconds. This is just to test the animation. And with the offset value, I first keyframed 46%, and at 2 seconds I changed the value to 50%. I also thought I should round up the percentage value. This is how it looks so far. I then keyframe the movement of the text layer, making sure that it's moving from top to bottom in a linear speed. Then I add keyframe on offset whenever the dot is aligned with the text. Roughly it's about a keyframe per second. You do need to adjust each animation to get it right. Then I select all the offset keyframes, press F9, then select the graph editor. Right click on the timeline and change it to speed graph. Then I push the tangents from both sides to the middle. You should end up something like this. So this is the animation with the keyframes. The last step is to go to Effect, Distort and Warp. It would appear to be wonky first, but we could tweak the settings. Change the warp axis to vertical, and then apply a negative number to the slider. You can start with a small number, and adjust it as you like. You can tweak the keyframes further, but I'll just leave it there. Coming up next, I'll try to do this with expressions. But first, I need to understand what I want the expressions to do. I want the text layers to be always moving on a circular path. I want the text layers always pointing to the effector with an angle. And I want them to be pushed on the x-axis when it comes to the midpoint vertically. And I want a procedural way to control all the text layers. There is a bit of maths, but do not fret. I'll put the links below and try my best to explain them as we go along. I create another composition of the same size, everything the same, 10 seconds, the same. Double click on the ellipse tool to create a circle that will fill up the entire composition. Bring the center to the left simply by setting the X position to 0. I then created a text layer. I have to give it a name. Just call it text layer would do for now. I then press A to bring up its anchor point. With the first expression, I want to put the anchor point at the midpoint of the most left side. Here's the expression. I assign a variable called rect, stands for rectangle, and I'm assigning thisLayer.sourceRectAtTime to this variable. That means it will always look at the rectangular shape of this layer, and we just have to put the x and y coordinates into an array. The first element is this rectangle shape's most left value, and the second element is this rectangle's top value plus half of its height. When you click somewhere else, you can see the anchor point is always fixed to this layer's midpoint of the most left side, and it doesn't matter what text you put in, it's always there. I've got this expression in the description below, so feel free to check it out. And next I want to use the expression to control the rotation of this layer. So doesn't matter where I move it, it will always point to the center of the circle. There's an equation to do it. We just need to imagine there's a triangle between the anchor point and the center of the circle by finding out the different length of different sides. By finding out the length of different sides, we'll get the radians of the angle. Then we turn that radians value into degrees. The expression is again down below, and So I first create a variable called dx, distance on the x-axis. I pick whip this text layer's x position and then subtract the x position of the circle, which I named it as Effector. So just pick whip that and then create another variable called dy, distance on the y-axis. Again, pick whip the y position of itself and then subtract the y position of the effector. And with these two values, we could calculate the radians of the angle. There's actually a formula. I'm gonna put it on the screen now. And in After Effects, you just use Math.abs and plug in dy, dx. However, in After Effects, rotation is controlled by degrees. So, and luckily, in After Effects, there's radiansToDegrees, and we just put radians in there. And finally, we just put angles there, so the rotation is always reading the angles in degrees. And once you click that somewhere, you will see it's taken its effect. Now, doesn't matter where I move this, it will always point to the center of that circle. Next, I need to fix the x position on this curve. So I just need to move y and it will always remain here. For that, again, Maths is your friend. I first right click on position and separate dimensions. That way I have better control of the x and y values. Hold down Alt or Option and right click on X to bring up the expressions text box. First, we need to take the x and y of the center of the circle separately. Then we need to get the radius of the circle. The radius of the circle is a built-in property. Toggle on Contents under the Shape layer. It's the ellipse path. If you open it, you get the size. The size is just diameter here, I think. Radius is half of that size. So pick whip the radius variable to it and then divide it by 2. We'll also need the y position of the text layer itself, so pick whip its own y position. Next, we need to know the distance on the y-axis. It's just y subtract effector y. So x is effector x plus math.square, the power of radius, subtract the power of y distance. I have a copy of the expression in the description and also some links to the maths. Once you click somewhere else, the expression has taken effect, and you can see now the text layer is always sticking to the circular path, exactly where it should be. However, this is not perfect. It can't pass 90 degrees as I show you here. If I go any further than 90 degrees, it will go haywire. For this video, I'm not going to try to fix it, I'll leave it as it is for now. Next is to create an animation when the text layer is coming to the midpoint of the composition. It should be pushed to the right when it's around here. And we're going to use an if statement for that. So I set a new x variable and assign the default x to it. Then I'll use some if statements to set the parameter of the animation. So the idea is when it comes down closer to the center, when it's about 50 pixels, it should start moving towards the right. So if y is smaller than effector y, which means the text layer is above the center, and the other condition is when it's coming into the 50 pixel zone. So when y is smaller, the y distance is smaller than 50, then I want the x value to be pushed to the right. And here we're going to use linear or is to remap the value change. So the new x would be is the y distance. We're going to map it from 50 to 0, and we want to push it to, I'll give it a factor of 1.1 for now, or 1.2. If you're not sure what remapping is in After Effects, I've put some links down below. So the second condition is when y is greater than effector y, meaning that it's gone past the midpoint and continuing downwards. When it's still within the 50 pixel zone, we should see the text layer coming back from the right towards the center. And again, I'm going to use is to remap this. And for any other time, I'll just use the newX value for it. However, my first attempt of this expression didn't work. But then I realized I've made the mistake. The y distance has to be a positive value, otherwise it will be always smaller than 50 if it's a negative number. That means x will always start being pushed to the right. Luckily in After Effects I could use Math.abs to keep this value always positive. And after that it's all working fine. The next step is to have a lot of text layers and have them move one after another. Under the Effector layer, I bring in a slider control and pick whip the Y position of the text layer to it. And then I created another slider control and call it Y offset. This is to control the distance between different text layers. Press Command or Control D, I make a copy of my text layer and I bring it below. You can't see it now because their positions are just the same. Now I pick whip text layer 2's Y position and plus the offset value. This would be quite laborious if you do this on every text layer. The solution is to use the index number to drive the offset value between different layers. So at the end of this expression, I just times index subtract 2. That means the current index is 3. When it subtract 2, it becomes 1. That means it's 1 time of offset. When you copy a new layer and bring it below, it will generate a new index number. We use that index number, subtract 2, and then multiply the offset. All layers are set apart by this offset value. So I duplicate a lot of layers and put them in the right order and have them around the circular path. I don't need to see that stroke of the path anymore, so I turn it off. I also bring in the blue dot. And for the final part, I ask Bart again. I asked it to give me 20 cities and separated by comma but no space between them. It's working like a charm. Back to my comp, I create another text layer at the bottom and then copy all the cities to this one layer. Then I click the little eye at the front to disable it. Then I select my first text layer, open up the source text properties, and then I pick whip that to the source text of the disabled text layer. Now I've copied the text content, I just need a bit of expressions to select each word. I set a variable called textString to it. Below the string of text, I type in textString.split, parenthesis, quotation mark with a comma in it, and then dot square bracket and with a 0 in it. 0 is the first word of that long text string, which is Tokyo, and 1 is London, and so on and so forth. You'll work it out. And then I right click on source text and copy expressions only. After that, I select all the text layers below. So I right click on the source text properties, select copy expressions only, then select all text layers below and press Command or Ctrl V to paste the expressions over. And you can see all cities are assigned to the text layers now. So these are the two ways I try to replicate this animation. You could clearly see the difference on the screen. The one on the left is the original animation I saw, the one in the middle is with keyframes, and the one on the right is with expressions. I know they look different, but let me know what you think. I certainly have learned something in the process. I hope you did too. Finally, I'd really appreciate it if you can like and subscribe to my channel, or maybe let me know what kind of content you're interested in. And with that, thanks again for watching and see you soon.